Imagine a military genius whose very name struck fear across the ancient world for
A
centuries.
truly legendary figure.
We're exploring Hannibal, the Carthaginian general who commanded his forces with, well, astonishing brilliance against the mighty Roman Republic. Our aim today is really to pull out the most compelling insights that made him one of history's greatest military minds. We'll look at his incredible journey, his tactical innovations, and the huge mark he left.
It's such a compelling figure because his story, it's really more than just battles, isn't it? It's about strategy, incredible resilience, and just the sheer force of one person's will. We'll look into the moments that really defined him, from that famous boyhood oath right through to his lasting impact, which, still echoes today.
Okay, so let's start right there. This legendary rivalry with Rome. Where did it all begin? What sparked this lifelong animosity?
Well, the atmosphere in the Mediterranean then was incredibly tense. Rome had come out on top in the First Punic War, and you had this powerful feeling, revanchism, it's called, sweeping through Carthage, this real desire for revenge, to get back what they lost. Hannibal's own father, Hamilcar Barca, a top general, really embodied that feeling.
It was Hamilcar who kind of set Hannibal on this path, wasn't it, with that dramatic vow?
Absolutely. The story goes he was just 9 years old, begging his father to take him on campaign.
Just 9.
Incredible, isn't it? And Hamilcar agreed, but only if Hannibal swore an oath, supposedly over a sacrificial fire, to never be a friend of Rome for his entire life. Another version even has him declaring, "I swear I will use fire and steel to arrest the destiny of Rome." That moment, they say, happened in Peninsular. It really set everything in motion. It basically forged his destiny.
So a childhood promise, a really profound commitment, shaping a general's entire career. How did he then rise to command? What was his ascent like?
Well, after his father conquered large parts of Hispania, Hannibal served under his brother-in-law, Hasdrubal the Fair. Hasdrubal was more focused on consolidating their position there, but then Hasdrubal was assassinated in 221 BC. And the army, almost immediately, proclaimed Hannibal commander-in-chief. He was only 26.
Just 26 years old.
And the Carthaginian government back home quickly confirmed it. They saw his potential, his leadership qualities were already obvious.
The Roman historian Livy paints quite a picture of him stepping into that command.
He really does. Livy wrote that when Hannibal arrived, the older soldiers felt like they were seeing Hamilcar in his youth again. He had the same bright look, the same fire in his eye. Livy said he was uniquely skilled at handling opposition, obeying orders when needed, but also commanding decisively, a natural leader. And he didn't waste any time. He solidified Carthaginian power, expanded south of the Ebro River, even won his first big battle success at the River Tagus.
And this growing power, this expansion, inevitably got Rome's attention, didn't it? Leading straight to the war.
Precisely. Rome made an alliance with Saguntum, a city south of the Ebro, basically declaring it a Roman protectorate. Hannibal saw this as a direct violation of a previous treaty and, frankly, an opportunity. He besieged Saguntum. It took 8 long months.
8 months.
A tough siege. The government in Carthage backed him, although there was some opposition, notably from a figure named Hanno the Great. But that siege of Saguntum, that was the spark. That kicked off the Second Punic War.
So war is declared, and Hannibal does something almost unthinkable. An overland invasion of Italy, war elephants and all, through the Alps. What is the strategic thinking there? It seems insane.
It was incredibly audacious. His grand strategy, you see, was totally different. Instead of a direct attack by sea, he wanted to open a northern front. The idea was to conquer Rome by peeling away its allied cities within Italy itself, not by assaulting Rome directly. A radical departure from how Carthage usually operated.
And he gathered a truly massive army.
Initial numbers vary, maybe 60,000, perhaps up to 100,000 troops, plus the war elephants. And think about the logistics, feeding and supplying that force. He set off from Cartagena late spring 218 BC, fought his way through northern tribes. Interestingly, he even let about 11,000 Iberian troops go home because they were reluctant. Shows some shrewd man management.
Smart move.
By the time he got to Gaul, he probably had around 40,000 infantry and 12,000 cavalry. He reached the Rhone River by September, cleverly outmaneuvering the local tribes trying to stop him. Facing the Alps, his army was down to maybe 38,000 foot soldiers, 8,000 horsemen, and 38 elephants, though very few of those elephants would actually make it through the mountains.
Right. And the exact route, that's still debated, isn't it?
It is. Historians argue about different passes, Col de Montchenèvre, Col de Capier, lots of theories.
But isn't there some newer research, something pretty specific?
There is. It's fascinating. Some recent work on ancient coins, numismatics, suggests his army passed close enough to see the Matterhorn. But even more compelling, perhaps, is bioarchaeology. They've analyzed peat bogs near the Col de la Traversette path, and they found heavily disturbed ground, traces of specific bacteria Clostridia found in horse and mule gut. And crucially, it's carbon dated right to 210 BC. It's strong evidence pointing towards that pass, the Col de la Traversette. And it would actually back up what the ancient historian Polybius wrote, that Hannibal crossed the highest of the Alpine passes. It's amazing how science can uncover these details centuries later.
That's incredible. Livy also mentions a specific engineering challenge during the crossing, right? Something about rocks.
He does. Livy describes Hannibal facing a massive rockfall blocking the path, and his solution, reportedly, was to heat the rock with huge fires, then douse it with vinegar, causing it to crack and break apart. Whether that exact detail is true, Polybius doesn't mention it, but it highlights the sheer difficulty, the kind of inventive, almost desperate measures they needed. He finally arrived in Italy, but he'd lost almost half his army just getting there.
Losing half your force before even fighting a major battle.
It sounds like failure, but it was actually a sign of his incredible strategic commitment. He was willing to pay an enormous price for that northern entry point, for the element of surprise, utterly fearless.
So he gets into Italy, having endured this brutal crossing, and then he just unleashes this string of victories. How did he manage that early dominance?
His real genius was assessing weakness. His own, yes, but critically his enemies. At the Battle of Ticinus, his cavalry was simply better. He smashed the Romans under Publius Cornelius Scipio, forced them out of Lombardy. Scipio himself was badly wounded, actually saved by his teenage son.
And that son would become Scipio Africanus, the one who eventually defeated Hannibal.
The very same one. Poetic irony, almost.
Then came Trivia.
Yes, after Ticinus, Hannibal picked up allies among the Gauls and Ligurians. His army swelled back up to about 40,000. At Trebia, he used this brilliant surprise attack, an ambush from the flanks, that just cut the larger Roman infantry force to pieces. A masterclass in tactics, though most of his remaining elephants didn't survive the harsh winter that followed. Think about his crossing of the Arno marshes in spring 217 BC. His men marched for 4 days and 3 nights through flooded land. Just relentless. It was grueling, pushed them to the absolute limit. He lost a lot of men, and it was during this ordeal that Hannibal himself lost sight in his right eye to a nasty infection, likely conjunctivitis.
That hardship then set up the next big fight at Lake Trasimene.
Right. He deliberately provoked the Roman commander, Gaius Flaminius. He ravaged the countryside Flaminius was supposed to protect, drawing him into battle. Then Hannibal did something remarkable. He marched his army around Flaminius's flank, cutting him off from Rome. It's considered maybe the first recorded turning movement in military history.
A turning movement.
Essentially getting behind your enemy to trap them or force them to fight on your terms. He lured Flaminius's army into this narrow pass by the lake and then sprung the trap. He ambushed and completely destroyed the Roman army. Flaminius himself was killed. It was a devastating ambush, the worst the Romans suffered until much, much later at Carrhae against the Parthians. The psychological shock in Rome must have been immense.
So after Trasimene, Rome looks vulnerable. Why didn't he just march on the city then and there?
That's the key question people always ask. The main reason seems to be logistics. He didn't have the heavy siege engines, the catapults and towers, needed to break through Rome's formidable walls. His strategy was different. He aimed to break Rome's power by detaching its allies throughout Italy, undermining its strength piece by piece. This crisis forced Rome to appoint a dictator, Quintus Fabius Maximus Verrucosus. And Fabius brought in this new approach, the Fabian strategy.
The famous delaying tactics.
Exactly. Avoid big battles, harass the enemy, wear them down slowly through attrition, cut off supplies.
But even Fabius, the great delayer, couldn't always contain Hannibal, could he?
No. There was the night battle of Ager Falernus. Fabius thought he had Hannibal trapped in a valley. It looked like the end, but Hannibal pulled off this ingenious escape. He tied burning torches to the horns of cattle and drove them up a hillside at night.
Cattle with burning horns.
The Romans guarding the pass saw the lights, assumed Hannibal's main force was breaking out that way, and moved to intercept them. Meanwhile, Hannibal quietly marched his actual army out through the now unguarded pass. It's seen as a classic move of ancient generalship. Totally outfoxed Fabius and really damaged Fabius's prestige back in Rome.
Incredible ingenuity. And then came the battle that really sealed his legend, Cannae.
Ah, Cannae. Spring 216 BC. Hannibal captured a major Roman supply depot at Cannae in southern Italy. This forced the Romans' hand. They responded by raising the largest army they had ever fielded. Estimates vary, maybe 50,000, maybe as many as 80,000 men. A colossal force determined to crush him.
And Hannibal was outnumbered.
Significantly outnumbered, but he had a plan. His famous double envelopment. He positioned his weaker infantry, his Gauls and Spanish troops, in the center in a crescent shape bulging outwards. He let the Romans push hard into his center, which deliberately gave way, drawing the legions deeper and deeper into the pocket.
Alluring them in.
Exactly. While the Roman infantry charged forward, Hannibal's elite cavalry on the wings smashed the Roman cavalry, drove them off the field, and then, crucially, they turned inwards. They circled around and attacked the rear of the Roman infantry, which was now trapped, compressed, with Hannibal's infantry reforming in front and his cavalry behind, completely surrounded.
The scale of the losses at Cannae, it's hard to comprehend.
Just catastrophic for Rome. Somewhere between 50,000 and 70,000 Romans killed or captured in one afternoon.
50 to 70,000.
It's one of the bloodiest single days of battle in all of human history. Think about it. The consul Lucius Aemilius Paulus died there, 2 former consuls, 80 senators, that's like 25–30% of Rome's entire governing body, wiped out. Cannae wasn't just a military defeat, it was a national trauma. It forced Rome to completely rethink its approach to war, proving that sheer numbers meant nothing against true tactical genius.
And after that incredible victory, Hannibal's cavalry commander, Hannibal, supposedly said something quite pointed.
Yes, the famous line, Hannibal, you know how to gain a victory, but not how to use one.
What did he mean by that? Why didn't Hannibal take Rome then?
Well, it highlights that same persistent problem. No siege engines. Insufficient manpower for a long siege against a determined city like Rome. And crucially, not enough consistent support or reinforcements from Carthage. While some Italian cities, like the wealthy city of Capua, did switch sides and join him after Cannae, the political situation back in Carthage was divided. The ruling oligarchy, especially the peace faction led by Hanno, often prioritized other fronts or just hesitated to fully back Hannibal's Italian campaign.
So Cannae was the high point, but then the war bogged down into a stalemate. How did Rome's Fabian strategy finally start working?
Essentially, Rome just refused to fight him on his terms anymore. They stuck to the Fabian strategy, avoiding major pitched battles at all costs. Instead, they used multiple smaller armies to constantly shadow him, harass his troops, attack his foragers, cut off his supplies. It forced Hannibal into a sort of scorched earth policy just to feed his army, which wasn't popular. And he kept asking Carthage for more men and resources, but the support was inadequate. Hanno the Great and his faction were consistently arguing against sending significant reinforcements to Italy.
So even with his tactical brilliance, he was slowly being strangled, resource-wise.
That's a good way to put it. He still won battles, mind you. He destroyed 2 Roman armies in 212 BC. He even ambushed and killed Marcus Claudius Marcellus, a very famous Roman general, in 208 BC. But Rome just kept coming. They had deeper reserves of manpower. They slowly reconquered the cities that had defected, like Tarentum. The strategic tide was gradually, painfully turning against him. His position in Italy was getting weaker.
And then came a devastating personal blow.
A huge blow. In 207 BC, his brother Hasdrubal was marching down from Spain, trying to reach Italy with reinforcements. This was Hannibal's best hope. But the Romans intercepted Hasdrubal at the Battle of the Metaurus River, defeated his army, and killed him. And then, in a particularly grim message, the Romans had Hasdrubal's head cut off, carried across Italy, and thrown over the rampart right into Hannibal's camp.
That's brutal.
A chilling message. That loss essentially ended any realistic hope Hannibal had of winning the war in Italy. He'd been there 15 years. With Carthage losing ground elsewhere too, he was finally recalled home in 203 BC. Rome, led by Scipio, was now invading Africa. Before Hannibal left Italy, though, he had his achievements recorded on bronze tablets, leaving them in a temple. A final mark on the land he dominated for so long.
His return to Africa then sets up the final showdown.
It does. There were some brief, ultimately fruitless peace talks between Hannibal and Scipio. Roman distrust, what they called Punic faith, basically accusing Carthaginians of being untrustworthy, didn't help. Plus, the Carthaginians attacked a stranded Roman fleet, which soured things further, so it came down to one last battle, Zama, in 22 BC.
What made Zama different? Why did Scipio succeed where so many others had failed?
Several key things. Unlike in Italy, at Zama, Scipio and the Romans actually had the better cavalry. A big part of this was because Massinissa, a Numidian king who provided excellent horsemen, had switched sides from Carthage to Rome.
That must have hurt Hannibal.
Huge blow. Hannibal still had more infantry and about 80 war elephants, but Scipio had figured out a way to deal with the elephants. He had his soldiers blow loud trumpets, create channels in their lines for the elephants to run through, basically panicked them. Many elephants turned and ran back into Hannibal's own lines, causing chaos. Then Scipio's superior cavalry defeated the Carthaginian horsemen and, crucially, swung around to hit Hannibal's infantry from the rear, just like Hannibal used to do.
So Scipio used Hannibal's own tactics against him in a way.
In a sense, yes. The rear attack caused Hannibal's formation, even his veterans, to collapse. His aura of invincibility was finally broken.
And the cost for Carthage.
Devastating. They lost maybe 20,000 killed, another 15,000 wounded or captured. Roman losses were comparatively tiny, maybe 2,500. Zama wasn't just a battle loss. It confirmed Rome's total dominance of the Mediterranean. It was the end for Carthage as a great power.
So after Zama, Hannibal is defeated, but he's still only 46. What happens next? Does he just fade away?
Not at all. He actually transitioned into politics. He was elected suffet, which was Carthage's chief magistrate position, kind of like a prime minister, and he launched major reforms. He focused on cleaning up corruption, especially among the wealthy oligarchs on the ruling council, the 104. He recovered embezzled money to help pay the huge war indemnity Rome had imposed. He even changed how the council worked, limiting terms to 1 year, making them elected, trying to break the oligarch's stranglehold on power.
But making powerful enemies with those reforms, presumably. And Rome was still watching.
Absolutely. His reforms actually made Carthage prosperous again, quite quickly, which made Rome nervous. They suspected he was communicating with Antiochus III, the ruler of the Seleucid Empire in the east, maybe plotting against Rome again. Knowing he had powerful enemies both at home and abroad, Hannibal chose to flee Carthage around 195 BC. He went into voluntary exile.
Where did he go?
First to Tyre and Phoenicia, then Antioch, and finally ended up in Ephesus at the court of Antiochus III, who welcomed him.
And even in exile, he clearly kept his sharp mind and his sharp tongue.
Oh, yes. There are great stories about that. Cicero tells one where some philosopher, Phormio, gave Hannibal this long-winded lecture about being a general. Hannibal's dry response was supposedly, "I've seen many old fools in my life, but this one beats them all." And another time, Antiochus was showing off his massive, glittering army and asked Hannibal if he thought this would be enough for the Romans. Hannibal's reply was pure Hannibal. "Yes, I think all this will be quite enough for the Romans, even though they are most greedy." Sarcasm wasn't lost on him.
So how did his exile eventually end? Rome never stopped pursuing him.
Pretty much. After Rome defeated Antiochus, Hannibal had to flee again. He found refuge for a time with King Prusias I of Bithynia in modern-day Turkey. He even helped Prusias in a naval war, winning a battle by having his sailors throw clay pots filled with venomous snakes onto the enemy ships.
Just snakes.
Seriously. Apparently so. Always unconventional. But eventually, the Romans put pressure on Prusias, demanding he hand Hannibal over.
And faced with capture.
He chose his own exit. Rather than fall into Roman hands after all those years, Hannibal committed suicide. He took poison. The exact details vary, but his reported last words have this defiant, weary ring. "Let us relieve the Romans from the anxiety they have so long experienced, since they think it tries their patience too much to wait for an old man's death."
A dramatic end to a dramatic life.
His death was sometime between 183 and 181 BC at a place called Labissa in Bithynia, fulfilling, strangely, an old oracle that said, "Libis on earth shall cover Hannibal's remains."
So thinking about his legacy, it's obviously huge militarily, but also complex. How did Rome itself remember him, the enemy who caused them so much terror?
It's fascinating. He caused genuine deep-seated fear in Roman society. Hannibal ad portas. Hannibal is at the gates, became this phrase embodying pure terror. Yet you also see this grudging respect, even admiration, especially in writers like Livy. The Romans actually erected statues of him in Rome itself later on. It was like acknowledging the sheer quality of the enemy they had overcome. It magnified their own achievement.
A kind of love-hate relationship almost.
Fear mixed with profound respect. You have to remember, Rome never buckled. They refused to admit defeat, never seriously considered peace after Cannae, didn't even ransom their prisoners. There were no major revolts or peace factions gaining traction in Rome itself. Their steadfastness was incredible, even when Hannibal literally marched up to the walls of Rome in 211 BC, causing panic. The Senate stayed firm. They famously held an auction for the very piece of land Hannibal's camp occupied, just to show their utter confidence they'd win eventually.
That's confidence. Beyond Rome, how did his military thinking shape history?
His influence is immense. He's consistently ranked as one of the all-time greatest military strategists and tacticians. Cannae, that double envelopment, is still studied intensely in military academies worldwide. It's a textbook maneuver. Even Scipio Africanus, the man who beat him, reportedly admitted in a later chat that Hannibal was perhaps the greatest general ever, or at least second only to Alexander the Great.
So his ideas really permeated military thought.
Definitely. People like the military historian Theodore Aralt Dodge praised him for excelling not just in tactics, but also in logistics and grand strategy. He pioneered fighting wars by avoiding set-piece battles when necessary, focusing on supply lines, using flank attacks. You can see echoes of his thinking throughout history. Some say Germany's Schlieffen Plan in World War I had elements of Cannae. Modern generals like Georges Patton famously admired him, even claimed to be a reincarnation. And Norman Schwarzkopf Jr. during the First Gulf War explicitly said Hannibal's principles of war still applied. His strategic mind really resonated.
And beyond the military sphere, does his legacy pop up elsewhere?
Oh, absolutely. In Tunisia today, where Carthage was, he's a national hero. He's on their money. Streets are named after him. There's a TV channel, plans for monuments. Interestingly, Sigmund Freud apparently saw Hannibal as a personal symbol, representing Semitic tenacity against the Catholic Church, which is quite a take.
Freud, too.
Even Ataturk, the founder of modern Turkey, had great respect for him, leading to a memorial cenotaph being built in Turkey near where he died. He pops up in fiction, art, and even, randomly, on Tunisia's football kit for the 2022 World Cup. He's a truly enduring global figure.
From that oath as a boy, sworn over fire, to shaking the foundations of the Roman Republic. It's an incredible story of vision, tactical genius, and just relentless determination. He completely changed the game on the battlefield.
That conflict with Rome, it really wasn't just empires clashing. It felt personal, like a collision of powerful wills. And his ability to operate, to win for 15 years deep inside enemy territory, often without proper support from home. It just speaks volumes about his leadership and his mastery of war against staggering odds.
As you think about all this, consider how one person's absolute conviction, maybe born in that childhood promise, could challenge his superpower so profoundly, leaving a mark not just on battlefields, but on history itself, on how future leaders thought about war. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? What drives that kind of singular, unwavering focus? And what's the ultimate price for that kind of lifelong commitment?